Hey guys, how are you? And welcome to another video edition for our midweek series. Church, I'm really excited about this next series that we've begun, Set Apart. Our teachers have done a fantastic job of really digging deep in the Bible and giving us a full picture of God's perspective on being holy. And this, I believe, will be a very challenging series for all of us, because whenever you examine the holiness of God and understand God's perspective that He desires us to be like Him, holy, it is going to challenge us. And I want you as family group leaders not to be afraid or ashamed to call our church to the standard that God calls each of us to. You should not be apologetic about God's expectations to imitate God. You should not feel sorry that God expects, even when it hurts, as we read on Sunday, that God expects that we are obedient. I know this is challenging. I know that this is hard. But I believe that God is taking the southern region to a new place of holiness. And I'm excited about it. So as you have your midweek series this week, I know some groups are very small. Some may be 10 or 15 people. I know some groups that meet on a midweek basis are a little larger, 22 and larger in the youth and family. A great way to begin is to open up very openly and honestly about where you're at in light of what you've studied thus far. Maybe you can open it up by saying, wow, on Sunday, here are the things that I walked away with that really challenged me to the core. You may be able to go, wow, here are the things that really hit me deep and that I had to get open and honest about. Another great way with a group, whether small or large, is say, hey, before we get going, what is one thing you walked away with from last week's midweek series or last Sunday's service? What's one thing that you walked away with? And that way it reminds the church of what we heard. It may inspire others as we dig into this midweek. This midweek, we're going to talk about the holiness of God and what God expects as it pertains to materialism. We live in a country that materialism is one of our greatest sins. And I think it's too easy to overlook that in talking about it with regards to the church. We're inundated with so much wealth, so much money, and these kinds of things. And I want you as a family group leader to realize the importance of this message. There are a few points that we're going to hit on here. We're going to talk about, one, the benefits of wealth. That wealth in and of itself is not bad. There are great benefits as far as really helping to advance God's church or helping the poor and needy. And there's some great examples in this study that you can really key off of and really preach. I don't want people to think or underestimate the benefits that there are in wealth. God has created it for a good purpose, and we can use it for that. We're also going to talk about the dangers of wealth. In this one, really, we can see as we look at the world and some of the challenges that the world has faced with regards to the pursuit of wealth and greed and what it's done to our society. Preach this. Talk about this. Speak about this with great confidence. There are great challenges in the dangers of the pursuit of wealth. We're also going to not just talk about the dangers of it, but handling wealth. God has called us to be holy in our stewardship of money and our possessions. Are we holy? Are we using what God has blessed us with the way Jesus would use it? Stewardship of wealth is very important as disciples. And there's some great examples. There's some great passages here. Preach them. Also, we're going to talk about what true wealth is. Jesus talks about store up treasures for us in heaven. What does that look like? What do we value here? And then, as always, there's a charge at the end. Listen, I know that the material you have may be lengthy, and you may not get through all of it. I don't want you to feel that you've got to rush through this. This outline that I'm providing for you is really a guideline. Here's some basic principles that you can teach and preach. But you've got to be able to look at your family group, understanding where they're at in regards to materialism. And you've got to make the best assessment that God has given you and then preach the word. What you see, what God has placed on your heart, preach it. Preach it boldly, inspiringly, and effectively, but be humble about your own circumstances. Be vulnerable. Be real. Where does this study hit you in your own heart? What decisions have you made? This will help folks to really navigate through these scriptures and how they can meditate on them for their own lives. Be a great example. Whenever I'm teaching and preaching, there are a couple of rules that I go by. I call it PIA. It's simple. Principle, illustration, application. So with this lesson that you get, there are a number of things to hit. You decide what you want to hit. But whatever you hit, it needs to have a principle, an illustration, and an application. What do I mean? What's the principle? What's the bottom line principle that you want to hit with any one of these topics? What's the principle? What's the thing that you want folks to walk away with? The second part of that is the illustration. The principle with regards that you want people to walk away with must be illustrated. You can use a biblical story or a personal example or some story that maybe you found, or a poem or a story on the internet that really illustrates this principle. And that principle may be that the pursuit of wealth is dangerous and it will kill you. The illustration may be one who went after great wealth and it destroyed their life and their family. The application is what they're going to leave with, the charge. And the application is crucial. You can't go with principle and illustration and no application. What's the application? The application maybe is the pursuit of wealth will destroy you. Get open and honest about your money and how you're using it. Get open and honest about your heart and how you feel about money. It may be a different application. It may be something that's totally different than that. You've got to have an application at the end. So whenever you're preaching these messages, guys, preach from what you know. Understand what you see in your group and what God has placed on your heart. And add principle, illustration, and application. And I guarantee you this will help your family group midweek to be very, very effective. If you need any kind of help, if you have questions about these matters, please just give me a call. I'd be more than willing to help you out in any way, shape, or form. I love you. God is with you. Let's continue to do God's work. Amen.